Chapter 59 The Berserk Flamedevil Ma Xiaotao. Right, Ma Xiaotao had arrived. She'd left the academy from Shrek City's northern gate the moment she saw Huo Yuao release the inner courtyard disciple distress signal. With her level of speed, she was able to make it just in time to save Huo Yuao and Wang Dong. Though there were a total of 6 enemies, Ma Xiaotao wasn't afraid in the least. Despite being a girl, she gave off the air of a general as she stood there. Bei Bei caught Huo Yuao while the speedier Jiang Nan caught Wang Dong. The latter was actually a 4-ring soul ancestor making her cultivation no less than Bei Bei's and Shu Sanchi's. This surprised Huo Yuao somewhat. No wonder she was a core disciple of the outer courtyard. Junior disciple, are you okay? Bei Bei asked in a low voice. This was the first time Huo Yuao saw a fierce killing intent in his senior brother's eyes. There was a true fire in his eyes. If Ma Xiaotao hadn't made it in time when they'd fallen from the sky earlier, they would have suffered severe injuries, if not died. We're fine, senior brother. We just overexerted ourselves a little. Huo Yuao whispered. Bei Bei nodded and gently placed him on the ground. Over on the other side, Jiang Nan was also putting Wang Dong down. Their 6 opponents were all gathered together. The golden light on the Soul Emperor who'd been struck by the golden road had finally disappeared by now, but his clothes were burned apart and his facial expression was extremely unsightly. Within the blink of an eye, he was forced to waste over 30% of his soul power in order to take on the golden road. He was a Soul Emperor. He'd actually been put into such an embarrassing position by the teamwork of a Soul Grandmaster and a Soul Elder. How could he not be angry? Hidden within his anger, however, was fear. A deep sense of fear. Sure enough, they're worthy of being called core disciples of Shrek Academy. A Soul Elder and a Soul Grandmaster were actually able to escape with their lives from an encirclement consisting of a Soul Emperor and 5 Soul Kings. If this were to be leaked out publicly, who'd believe it? That golden light is probably a mysterious fusion skill. Although he was inwardly furious, the Soul Emperor already had thoughts of retreating. Ma Xiaotao and the other students behind her wouldn't be able to take them on. But at the end of the day, they were still students of Shrek Academy. It wouldn't be possible to defeat all of them within a short period of time. On top of that, Shrek Academy was so close to them and in the event one of their experts came. With that, the commander made a prompt decision. He suddenly waved his right hand, turned around and ran off with his subordinates. You want to run? If I let even one of you escape, this mama can't be called the Berserk Flamedevil Ma Xiaotao. The moment she noticed that they were about to flee, Ma Xiaotao immediately flew into a rage. In the past 100 years, nobody had been presumptuous enough to kill a disciple of Shrek Academy while being this close to Shrek City. As a disciple of the Academy's inner courtyard, her sense of pride towards the Academy was extremely intense. Moreover, she had wanted to find Huo Yuao to help her do something in the first place, so it was natural that she would spare nothing to help her underclassmen. Ma Xiaotao shouted, Shu Sanchi, protect these 2 students. Bei Bei and Jiang Nan, you 2 flank me on the right. If we let even a single one escape, I'll hold you personally accountable. With that, the 6 soul rings around Ma Xiaotao's body shone with a bright light. Of these, her second and third soul rings lit up simultaneously. An intense golden red flame exploded out from her body like a geyser as she flapped the wings behind her fiercely, which then propelled her body towards the 6 like a fiery meteor. She was clearly trying to take on 6 enemies by herself. Was this fierce? Yes, this was definitely fierce. However, this was also a symbol of strength. They were both Soul Emperor ranked experts, but Ma Xiaotao's 6 soul rings weren't ordinary. 2 yellow rings, 2 purple rings, and 2 black rings. This was the optimum combination for a Soul Master. On the other hand, her opponent had 3 yellow rings, 2 purple rings, and 1 black ring. This was a relatively decent combination among normal Soul Masters, but he was still completely outclassed by the inner courtyard disciple Ma Xiaotao. Her 6 opponents were very quick, but Ma Xiaotao was still quicker than them after using her second soul skill, Phoenix Baptism, and her third skill, Soaring Phoenix. Furthermore, she'd activated another soul skill the instant she'd flown out to intercept her opponents. Although it was more accurate to say that they were 2 soul skills, but not skills that came from a soul ring, Ma Xiaotao's legs lit up and reddish golden patterns started to revolve around them, following which, reddish golden flames shot out from her legs. Due to her rapid acceleration, a series of explosions and whistles erupted behind her as she moved. Although Huo Yuao and Wang Dong were somewhat tired, they were still extremely clear-headed and couldn't help but widen their eyes at this scene. They naturally knew that disciples of the inner courtyard were strong, but now they finally understood just how strong they were from this battle. She'd actually used 4 soul skills in a row to chase after an opponent. The speed she'd reached wasn't something they even dared to think about. Even 7 or 8 ringed experts wouldn't be able to compare with her current speed. Furthermore, the last 2 skills she'd unleashed had come from her soul bones. In other words, she had fused her legs with soul bones. To be precise, an identical set of soul bones. The whistling and rumbling Ma Xiaotao shot viciously into her enemies like an artillery shell. Only 2 or 3 seconds had passed since she'd activated her Phoenix Baptism and Soaring Phoenix to speed up and her soul bone skills to explosively accelerate. She instantly entered their formation and didn't leave them any time to react, causing them to be caught completely off guard. Ma Xiaotao's target was the enormous warblade-wielding Soul Emperor, and she shot straight towards him. The Soul Emperor's perception naturally exceeded that of the Soul Kings beside him, but at that moment he felt something off and turned around to find that Ma Xiaotao was already in front of him. When facing a life and death crisis, the first reaction of an overwhelmingly large majority of people would be self-preservation, and this Soul Emperor wasn't an exception to that rule. He tried his best to lean to the side while he charged forward in order to dodge Ma Xiaotao's attack. The spectacular aura coming from her attack simply wasn't something he could take head on. However, it no longer mattered if he dodged or not since Ma Xiaotao had already forcefully entered the nucleus of their formation. Hong. Huo Yuao and Wang Dong only saw Ma Xiaotao charge into the enemy formation and release a terrifying explosion. Her golden reddish flames formed an enormous pillar of flame that was over 10 meters high and released a sonorous phoenix cry. The figure of a fiery phoenix circled around that enormous pillar of flame. 4 figures simultaneously flew out in 4 different directions. The instant the pillar of flame vanished, only these 4 of their 6 opponents remained. Huo Yuao swallowed a mouthful of saliva and mumbled, Wang Dong, I'm very suspicious as to how he escaped from the senior sister of ours at that time. Wang Dong couldn't even reply. Shu Sanchi, who was responsible for them, smiled bitterly. That's because senior Xiaotao's been suppressing the demonic fire within her, so she won't use all of her strength in a normal situation. Today, however, she's truly enraged. That's why she's using all of her strength. Senior Xiaotao's a girl, but where do you think the title of Berserk Flamedevil came from? During the short period of time in which their conversation occurred, Ma Xiaotao's figure reappeared. Her 4 soul skills hadn't been used just to allow her to chase after her opponents, but had the added purpose of raising her strength to its limits. Her previous attack was already comparable to that of a 7-ring soul sage. As a student of Shrek Academy, she not only possessed enormous strength but also an extremely refined amount of control over her soul skills. There were many different ways of using soul skills that were secrets of Shrek Academy and only students who'd signed confidentiality agreements would be able to learn them. The 4 enemies who'd been sent flying including the Soul Emperor all had reddish golden flames enshrouding their bodies. Their bodies swayed and collapsed to the ground as they had all been similarly affected by her attack. Ma Xiaotao didn't immediately follow up since her previous attack had drained her soul power by a large amount. She looked towards the sky and then spread her arms and wings wide. She took a deep breath as a large number of faint red dots of light immediately began to gather towards her at a noticeable rate. She was actually recovering her soul power during battle. At this moment, Bei Bei and Jiang Nan had just caught up to her. The 2 of them simultaneously made a move, taking on an enemy Soul King each. The higher one's cultivation was, the faster one's rate of recovery would be. The enemy Soul Emperor was already filled with astonishment. Was she even human? A single Soul Emperor had instantly obtained an overwhelming advantage against 6 opponents. He no longer dared to even try to resist the terrifyingly hot flames that surrounded her body and soul power. Without even daring to waste any more time, he turned around and fled. At this moment, he no longer cared about his teammates. He knew that Shrek Academy students were very powerful, but had never expected them to be this strong. All of them hadn't even been able to face a single Soul Emperor. Ma Xiaotao's eyes had by now turned a fiery red. A trace of disdain appeared at the corners of her mouth as she saw the fleeing Soul Emperor. She flapped her wings once more, causing her body to move horizontally. Her target wasn't the Soul Emperor but the other living Soul King who Bei Bei and Jiang Nan hadn't taken on. The Soul King was astonished and spared no cost to activate a soul skill in order to block Ma Xiaotao. However, her fiery wings suddenly vanished and were replaced by a red light that severed the sky before vanishing without a trace. Suddenly both the Soul King's body and his soul skill froze in midair. Ma Xiaotao didn't even spare him a glance. Her slender body rose into the air while a sonorous phoenix cry rang out. A countless number of magnificent feathers had appeared on her body before forming a beam of red light with an incomparably beautiful tail that shot towards the Soul Emperor as it left behind dots of reddish gold and starlight in the sky. At that moment, her last black soul ring finally lit up with a dazzling light. The golden reddish light devoured everything, and the Soul Emperor and his falling comrades were no exception. He was unable to put up a fight against Ma Xiaotao despite them both being Soul Emperors. Over on the other side, Bei Bei and Jiang Nanan hadn't disappointed her. When a Soul Ancestor fought against a Soul King, the former would normally be suppressed by the latter. However, the two of them were both core disciples of Shrek Academy. It would be hard to determine the victor even if the two parties were at their peak conditions, let alone when the two Soul Kings had already been injured by Ma Xiaotao's attack. When Bei Bei and Jiang Nanan rushed over, the Soul Kings hadn't even recovered their strength yet. Bei Bei was an explosive assault type Soul Master while Jiang Nanan was an explosive agility type Soul Master. The results of their respective matches were obvious. By the time Ma Xiaotao finished her match, one of the two Soul Kings had been electrocuted till he was a block of coal while the other had been sent flying 10 meters into the air by Jiang Nanan's attack before being stomped on in midair. Only a minute had passed since Ma Xiaotao had started her onslaught when it ended. All 6 of their enemies had fallen in this short period of time. When she realized that all of them had been killed, Ma Xiaotao scratched her head somewhat embarrassedly. I forgot to leave someone alive. Bei Bei and Jiang Nanan could only stare at her helplessly. Knowing how fierce she was, Bei Bei and Jiang Nanan naturally had to go all out the moment she said that she wouldn't let a single one escape. Their opponents were Soul Kings, so they naturally had to be vicious. Whatever. I'll let the Academy's Guardian team examine their corpses once we're back. I'm sure they'll be able to find a few hints. Ma Xiaotao waved her hand and brushed off her mistake. Huo Yuao and Wang Dong's eyes were filled with nothing but admiration towards Ma Xiaotao. Ma Xiaotao's earlier performance could only be described using the phrase as swift as wind, as aggressive as fire. Even though they were both Soul Masters, Ma Xiaotao's 6 soul rings seemed to have come alive. They flickered one after another, and whenever she alternated between them, she'd always use the soul skill most suitable to the situation. Huo Yuao and the rest could barely use their soul skills this quickly with a single soul ring, yet she'd seemed entirely uninhibited by the number of soul rings she had. This was the main reason that her opponent had no chance against her, despite them both being Soul Emperors. Of course, Ma Xiaotao was also an extraordinarily talented Soul Master who possessed the evil phoenix. Her powerful martial soul and soul bones already made her much stronger than an ordinary 6-ring Soul Emperor. By this point, 7 or 8 prominent figures had appeared atop Shrek City's city walls, and a large number of soldiers stood behind them respectfully. Elder Lin and Yan Xiaosh were included in this group of 7 or 8 people. The distress signal of an inner courtyard disciple was an extremely important matter to Shrek Academy. In truth, they'd already arrived earlier on. With their cultivation levels, it was natural that they'd arrive earlier than Ma Xiaotao. However, as teachers, they hadn't instantly made a move, as they wanted to see what their students were capable of, and their students hadn't disappointed them. The word remarkable could be used to describe everything that had happened, regardless of whether it was Huo Yuao and Wang Dong's escape, or if it was Ma Xiaotao, Bei Bei, Jiang Nanan, and Shu Sanqi's timely rescue. The intruders had all fallen, with their only mistake being that they hadn't left anyone alive. Yan Xiaosh was somewhat speechless. This Xiaotao girl is too explosive. She becomes an entirely different person the moment she enters combat. Elder Lin smiled slightly, though that's mainly dictated by her temperament. It's also because of her martial soul. However, this child's cultivation has increased by quite a large amount. In fact, I reckon that she'll be able to break through the 7-ring stage within 3 years. Yan Xiaosh chuckled. Elder Lin, I didn't have any assurance of my plan back then. However, it seems that I can now give a definite answer to your question because of Huo Yuao's appearance. Haven't you sensed that the most astonishing part of this entire event was their escapade? They naturally hadn't seen everything that had occurred. However, the person who'd been closest to the battle had been Elder Lin. The instant she'd appeared atop the city walls after discovering the distress signal had been the same instant that Huo Yuao had unleashed the jade green light that had caused the 3 Soul Kings to lose their ability to move. Even though Yan Xiaosh had been somewhat late, he didn't arrive from the city. Because of this, his line of sight hadn't been obstructed, which had allowed him to vaguely witness that scene. The level of speed that these consummate level experts had couldn't be compared to that of ordinary Soul Masters. Their escape, however, combined with the stunning golden road that they'd fight off, had given these two members of the Academy's upper echelon, and the experts beside them, a deep impression. Ma Xiaotao's performance had admittedly been outstanding, but she was already a disciple of the inner courtyard. Thus, there simply hadn't been any suspense in her victory over her 6-ringed opponent. However, it was a different case for Huo Yuao and Wang Dong. A Soul Grandmaster and a Soul Elder had actually managed to escape from a formation of 5 Soul Kings and a Soul Emperor. This was enough to illustrate the doubts they had. If Ma Xiaotao hadn't made it in time, though they still would have been bruised from their fall, the possibility of their death was extremely small. At that time, Bei Bei, Shu Sanqi, and Jiang Nanan had already arrived, at which point temporarily staying alive would have posed no problem to them. It could be said that their escape had been entirely successful. Yan Xiaosh and Elder Lin were both members of the Sea God's Pavilion, yet they couldn't find any faults with Huo Yuao and Wang Dong's earlier performance. Xiaosh, were you able to see what skill Huo Yuao used when he was being chased in the air? Elder Lin smiled slightly. Yan Xiaosh was still somewhat stunned by what he'd seen, thus he shook his head. I was too far away from them, thus I wasn't able to see it clearly. Elder Lin, you must have seen it. Just what sort of soul skill did he use? It was actually able to cause 3 Soul Kings to lose their ability to fly. Elder Lin smiled. My heart was still aching after those 2 fellas took away a precious soul bone from my pavilion, but I now think that it was extremely worth it now that I've seen this skill. If I'm not mistaken, he used a domain type skill, which should have come from his soul bone. Perhaps this soul bone of his is related to the awakening of his second martial soul. Yan Xiaosh was flabbergasted. Elder Lin, are you sure that it was a domain type skill? Elder Lin glanced at him, but didn't reply. She turned around and walked into the city, and she unhurriedly said, someone had a lot of guts. To think that he'd bully one of our students all the way until they reached the academy. Do as you wish. Yan Xiaosh knew that it was a slip of the tongue. He bowed towards Elder Lin, then stood back up, his eyes filled with killing intent. He turned towards someone beside him and then said, take all of the corpses back to the academy. Spare no expenses. Discovered just who dared to attack one of our students in Shrek Academy's territory. Yes, within the city. Thank you, senior sister. Even though Huo Yuao and Wang Dong had overdrafted their soul power, there wasn't anything wrong with their physical bodies. They respectfully bowed towards Ma Xiaotao, their eyes full of admiration. Ma Xiaotao waved them off. You don't need to thank me. These fellas must have been tired of living. To think they dared to cause a ruckus in our Shrek Academy. Have you offended anyone recently? No. The moment Huo Yuao said this, however, he suddenly thought of something, and immediately turned towards Wang Dong. Wang Dong was also looking at him. Both of them felt a sense of chilliness in their hearts when their gazes met. There was only a single person that they could have offended recently, Dai Huobin. Dai Huobin had lost to them twice in a row, which had resulted in him having to kowtow to them. He was from the White Tiger Duke's mansion, and was therefore capable of mobilizing several people to serve him. A Soul Emperor and 5 Soul Kings weren't forces that ordinary powers would possess. Before Huo Yuao could even speak, Bei Bei walked up to him. 2 junior brothers, this place isn't safe. Let's head back to the academy before we continue this conversation. In reality, there was no way they could be in danger anymore. Huo Yuao's distress signal had directly summoned the top powers of Shrek Academy. After a brief moment, even Fan Wu arrived. There was no doubt that Huo Yuao's distress signal had been given to him by Fan Wu, who added something special to the signal flare so that he'd also know to immediately rush over the moment Huo Yuao released it. Because of this, Even though only Huo Yuao and Wang Dong had originally gone to the auction, their returning party tent was much larger. The corpses left behind were all taken away by Yan Xiaotao's men. Huo Yuao and Wang Dong weren't able to sleep well that night. They were only allowed to return to their dorms early in the morning after the academy's unceasing interrogation. Although the academy hadn't given them a definite answer, they clearly had their own conjectures. Huo Yuao wasn't worried about how the academy would deal with this matter. He and Wang Dong had truly been too careless this time. They'd never thought that Dai Huobin would use a tactic like this in an area so close to Shrek Academy. The corpses gave them no leads. They had indeed been sent over by Dai Huobin, but they'd wiped away all traces of their identities before going to ambush Huo Yuao and Wang Dong. This wasn't done just to avoid anything troublesome for Dai Huobin, but also to prevent any suspicion falling upon the White Tiger Duke's mansion. The fury of Shrek Academy was something that even the White Tiger Duke's mansion, who controlled over 10,000 men in the Dalu Empire, couldn't endure. The academy didn't escalate the situation due to the lack of proof, but they were only suppressing their anger for the time being. The next morning, Dai Huobin's expression greatly changed when he saw the somewhat dispirited Huo Yuao and Wang Dong come to class, but he was still a son of the White Tiger Duke. Though he was greatly astonished, he quickly masked any overt changes on his face. He hadn't received any information as to what had occurred last night and had hoped that the final outcome wouldn't be too messy. As long as his men hadn't been injured, all would be fine. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to explain himself to his father. Cold sweating perceptibly began to drench the back of Dai Huobin's shirt. A sole emperor and 5 soul kings together were not enough to kill the two of them. Remorse began to blossom in the depths of his heart. Dai Huobin. Huo Yuao's eyesight was extremely good, and thus he was able to instantly see Dai Huobin, who had been staring at them with a bewildered look in his eyes. He then pulled Wang Dong along with him and took large strides towards him. Dai Huobin's face was somewhat pale. At the end of the day, he was only a youth around the age of 10 and thus couldn't conceal his emotions very well. Wang Dong's eyes turned cold as he saw Dai Huobin and was just about to charge straight towards him when Huo Yuao hurriedly held onto him. What do you want? Dai Huobin asked coldly, as he tightly held onto Wang Dong so as to not let him fly into a rage. Huo Yuao spoke in a deep voice. Didn't you lose that bet we made the other day? Come on, fulfill your promise now. It was now time for students to go to class, and so there was an endless stream of students walking past their classroom. They were all second-year students and were naturally aware of the grudges between Huo Yuao, Wang Dong, and Dai Huobin. A large number of students had already stopped by the side to watch the proceedings. Dai Huobin gritted his teeth and clenched his fists tightly, making the veins on his forehead pop out. Dalu walked out from class 2 and stood in front of Dai Huobin as she yelled, Huo Yuao and Wang Dong, don't be too excessive. Wang Dong replied icily, we're being excessive? Go ask him what he did last night. I'm just not sure whether or not he'll have the guts to reveal what he did. Dai Huobin gritted his teeth as he responded, I don't know what you're talking about. Wang Dong snorted disdainfully. I knew you were a scaredy cat. Regardless of whether or not you admit to what you did, you have to kowtow towards us now since you lost. Man up and admit your loss. Dalu was about to confront them, but she was shoved from behind by the flustered Dai Huobin. He didn't dare to confirm whether or not his men had been exposed. This matter was simply too important and was even related to the White Tiger Duke's mansion. No matter what, he absolutely couldn't reveal that he was guilty. Otherwise, it would affect the relationship between Shrek Academy and the White Tiger Duke's mansion and might even cause hostility between the former and the Dalu Empire. He took a deep breath as shoved the rancor and humiliation he felt into the depths of his heart. He abruptly dropped to his knees and kowtowed 3 times towards Huo Yuao and Wang Dong while shouting, I was wrong. Following which, he stood up and returned to his class. The rancor in Dalu's eyes was no less than in Dai Huobin's. After all, the person who'd been humiliated was her future boyfriend. She pointed her slightly trembling finger towards Huo Yuao and Wang Dong. You just wait. Huo Yuao acted as if he'd heard nothing as then turned back to class one along with Wang Dong. Right now, he wasn't feeling elated but vigilant. He'd made Dai Huobin kowtow in front of so many students, but the latter still hadn't flown into a rage. An enemy like this was much more terrifying, especially so given Dai Huobin's relatively astonishing growth. Unfortunately, he didn't suffer any sort of punishment after the ambush he planned. What Huo Yuao didn't know, however, was the fact that Dai Huobin had been put on the academy's blacklist due to the ambush he'd set up. Though they didn't have any concrete proof, just who was Shrek Academy have, from the mere scraps they had, they were able to deduce a lot of things. However, they were still afraid of the consequences of their actions, making the Daluo Empire an enemy for the sake of 2 students was clearly an unwise decision. Furthermore, when all was said and done, this was something that had been organized by Dai Huobin alone. Because of this, the extraordinarily talented Dai Huobin was destined to not enter the inner courtyard the instant he failed to kill Huo Yuao and Wang Dong. The advancement test had already ended, and every single person who could continue going to class had passed it. Students who hadn't passed could retake the test 3 days later, but they would be forced to leave the academy if they failed that test too. The class that Wang Yan and Zhou Yi taught, Class 1, had an astonishing 95% pass rate. The facts had shown that putting the 2 of them together was extremely effective. Zhou Yi could manage her students well while Wang Yan had a vast amount of knowledge and a warm teaching style. Combined with the truly outstanding batch of students that came this year, there were only a few people who weren't able to pass the advancement test. Moreover, they still had the chance to retake the exam. Comparatively, there were far more students from the other classes who had been eliminated. Yuao, why didn't you let me settle my grudges with him? Wang Dong asked Huo Yuao furiously. Huo Yuao said, the academy didn't deliver a verdict, so what can we do ourselves? We're all in the academy, so there won't be a conclusion to this matter even if we try to settle our grudges with him. Let's just stay quiet and keep a watch on him. It's still more important for us to work hard and increase our strength. When we can reach senior sister Xiaotao's level of strength, we won't need to be afraid of any ambushes anymore. The battle yesterday had stimulated him greatly, but it clearly wasn't possible for him to increase his cultivation by a large amount within a short period of time. However, soul tools could increase his survivability. Thus, he had already planned to use the next few days to modify his set of soul tools. At the very least, he wanted to make sure that all of them were class 2 tools. If he and Wang Dong had possessed a class 2 thruster when they were ambushed, they wouldn't have been left in such a miserable state. Wow, I really can't help but think about it. Wang Dong stared at the classroom door. Huo Yuao subconsciously followed his gaze to see a red-cloaked Ma Xiaotao standing outside the classroom and waving to him. Ma Xiaotao's physical state didn't seem right. Her charming face was flushed red and there was even a faint red light shining from her body. Huo Yuao questioningly pointed towards himself and Ma Xiaotao nodded before turning around and leaving. There was still some time before class began, so Huo Yuao hurriedly turned towards Wang Dong. If I come back late, help me out. I'm going to see why senior sister Xiaotao's looking for me. Oh. Wang Dong also felt that something about Ma Xiaotao wasn't quite right. If this was before yesterday, he definitely wouldn't have allowed Huo Yuao to go alone. However, he wasn't wary towards Ma Xiaotao since she had saved him yesterday. Huo Yuao quickly left the class. The moment he walked out of the door, he felt a wave of red light surge towards him. Regardless of how precise his spiritual detection was, he wasn't able to dodge it at all. A wave of heat immediately engulfed his entire body. The source of that heat was Ma Xiaotao's body. The 20-or-so-year-old Ma Xiaotao was at the most beautiful period of her life, and she was also extremely beautiful from the start. At this moment, her flushed cheeks made her even more of a radiant beauty. She let out a sweet moan as she hugged Huo Yuao. Huo Yuao, I can't hold it anymore. Quickly. Her voice was relatively loud, and not only did the students who were passing by hear her, but even the students from class 1 did as well. Furthermore, Huo Yuao was currently in front of the classroom door. As he was hugged by the fiery Ma Xiaotao, it was absolutely impossible for him to struggle free. A red light flickered and Ma Xiaotao suddenly accelerated and disappeared from the end of the corridor with Huo Yuao in tow. Wang Dong immediately felt that something was off. He hastily ran outside, but he could only see the back of Ma Xiaotao's body by the time he got there. There were still a few students in the corridor who were looking at each other. Wang Dong's expression became pale. He was just about to chase after them, but an arm suddenly stopped him the moment he took a step forward. Unhand me. Wang Dong flew into a rage. However, he was immediately sent into a daze when he turned around. The person who grabbed him was Zhou Yi. What's the matter? Why are you being so impatient? Zhou Yu spoke in a low voice. Though she liked the two of them, in accordance with her philosophy of teaching, she definitely wouldn't allow her students to go against her. Wang Dong said urgently, Teacher Zhou, Hua Yua has been taken away by Ma Xiaotao. Please go rescue him quickly. I feel that there's something wrong with her. In the event he's harmed by her, Zhou Yu pulled him back to the classroom. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Dean Yan has already notified me of this. Ma Xiaotao's martial soul is rather special, and Yua's second martial soul can help her cultivation. Furthermore, this will be somewhat useful for him. Go back to your seat. We're about to start class. With that, Zhou Yu shut the door to the classroom. Wang Dong's sense of urgency didn't subside as a result of Zhou Yu's explanation. On the contrary, it became even more intense. He naturally knew that Hua Yua wouldn't be injured by Ma Xiaotao, but the worry he felt intensified exponentially when he saw the image of Ma Xiaotao hugging Hua Yua in his mind. At that moment, Hua Yua's mind was blank. He naturally knew that Ma Xiaotao wouldn't hurt him, and moreover, he had seen her berserk appearance before. Only, he was somewhat embarrassed due to the big beauty hugging him out of the blue. Ma Xiaotao didn't have any perfume on her, but she nonetheless smelled rather refreshing. She smelled like sun-dried blankets, relaxing and clean. Unfortunately, she wasn't warm like a blanket, but somewhat scalding instead. Ma Xiaotao was extremely slender, and she continued to run as she hugged Hua Yua. The latter only saw the scenery around him alternating unceasingly, while the blank feeling he felt in his heart only grew stronger. Within the blink of an eye, they'd left the school building. Ma Xiaotao rushed towards Sea God's Lake with Hua Yua in tow, where she finally took a breather. Oh, how? Quickly, help me. I can't hold it anymore. I need your ice element. Help me suppress my evil fire. Quickly, she stammered. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.